The first hint that our quiet weekend at the lake was about to blow up came while my wife was still brushing her teeth. I was half awake, grinding coffee, when her phone lit up with an urgent dispatch. She hit speaker with one soapy thumb, mid-foam at the corners of her mouth. "Ma'am, we've received a 911 report that a woman named Rachel Merritt is unlawfully occupying a residence at Lake Pine Estates. The complainant is requesting immediate removal." Rachel slowly turned her head toward me, eyes wide with a perfect split of disbelief and dark amusement. She spat into the sink, wiped her mouth, and said, "Honey, apparently I'm illegally living in our own house." That was the moment I knew exactly who had done it. There was only one person in the entire community deranged enough to weaponize 911 over an HOA grudge. President Karen, self-appointed monarch of Lake Pine, clipboard ruler of the trees. And she had no idea she just tried to evict the woman who runs the state police force. Before I dive in, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if HOA chaos and slow burn justice are your thing, don't forget to subscribe. If you've never watched your calm, disciplined, borderline legendary spouse get falsely reported to 911 before breakfast, let me tell you, it's a very specific kind of surreal. 1 minute you're sipping coffee. The next you're staring at your wife as she wipes toothpaste off her lip and mutters, "She really called the cops on me." But to understand why that moment didn't actually surprise us, you have to go back 3 days. Lake Pine Estates didn't suddenly turn into a battlefield. The match was already lit. Karen just finally hurled it into a barrel of gasoline. We bought the cabin last spring, right after Rachel's promotion. She needed the break. When you command an entire state police force, you stack pressure like a discount pressure cooker. She never complained, not out loud, but I saw it in the night she couldn't sleep. In the morning she stared at her uniform like it weighed 100 pounds. So when the paperwork cleared, we loaded the truck with groceries, fishing gear, and a ridiculous amount of hope. Lake Pine was supposed to be our refuge. Tall pines, cold water, a dock just big enough for 2 chairs, no radio, no emergencies, no responsibilities. We drove up humming along to old country songs, already feeling our shoulders drop. We didn't even get the groceries inside before the trouble started. Rachel was unloading bags, humming some tune that had followed her all week, when gravel crunched up the drive. A white Lexus slid in like it owned the place. The door opened and out stepped the sort of woman you could smell before she spoke perfume thick enough to stun a raccoon, oversized sunglasses, and a knit sweater the exact color of "We raised your HOA dues again." Karen. She clutched a clipboard like a duelist holds a sword, already convinced there was a fight to win. No wave, no smile, not even a nod. She marched straight past us and started walking the perimeter of our cabin, scribbling notes like an appraiser who decided ahead of time everything was wrong. Rachel tried anyway. "Hi there, can we help you?" Karen didn't stop writing. "We've had unauthorized activity on this parcel. Need to confirm your status. Are you renters?" Rachel set the paper towels down, wiped her hands on her jeans. "No, we own this place." Karen finally looked up, squinting like she'd just caught a lie's scent. "I don't recognize you." I stepped beside Rachel. "We were here last spring. My name's Dean. This is my wife, Rachel." Her eyebrows tried to escape her forehead. "I'm the HOA president," she announced, like we might bow. "We require formal occupancy notices through the community portal. Did you submit one?" That portal was a half-dead WordPress site from the Jurassic era. The login form broke if you sighed near it. The calendar showed random dates from 2018. Half the pages were called things like draft, final, final 30, final 3. This was the system Karen spoke of like it was NASA mission control. Rachel smiled politely. "We weren't informed that was required for owners." Karen clicked her pen with aggression. "Regardless, I don't see your name on the ownership record." That's when it clicked. I'd bought the cabin under my LLC for tax reasons. My name was on the title, not Rachel's. Not because she wasn't my partner in everything, just one of those boring choices that look smart on a spreadsheet. To Karen, it was ammunition. Her mouth bent into something between a smirk and a snarl. She produced a slip of paper printed "God help us" in Comic Sans. "This is a warning. You must vacate until your residency can be verified." Rachel glanced at it once and handed it back. "No thanks. I don't take orders from you." Karen looked personally offended that the sun hadn't dimmed in response. From that moment, she declared war. The next morning, we were informed that our yard violated the natural debris limit. which turned out to mean 3 pine cones had fallen overnight. Then came the note about excessive porch occupancy, which was just Rachel drinking coffee on the porch swing. Karen had actually invented the term. I'm shocked she didn't trademark it. The masterpiece arrived 2 days later. A formal complaint accusing Rachel of unauthorized cohabitation, taped to our mailbox with packing tape and sealed with what looked suspiciously like a lipstick imprint. Rachel read it out loud in a deadpan. To whom it may concern, the unidentified female on premises must depart within 48 hours or face removal via local enforcement. I laughed so hard I had to hold the counter. Rachel didn't. This woman won't stop, she said quietly. She's going to push until she feels powerful. She was right. Karen wasn't the type to back down. She wasn't the type to self-reflect either. She was the kind to double down until she either got her way or set something on fire. Figuratively, probably. So by the morning Karen finally made that 911 call, we weren't shocked. Annoyed, sure. Amused, absolutely. But surprised, not even close. What we didn't know, standing in our kitchen watching patrol cars thread their way up our dirt road, blue lights flickering through the trees like confused fireflies, was just how spectacularly this would blow up in Karen's face. Because she wasn't trying to evict just anyone. She was trying to evict Commander Rachel Merritt, head of the entire state police force, woman with a direct line to the governor and more legal firepower in her phone than the HOA had in its entire archive. Karen had poked a dragon. She had no idea what kind of fire was about to roll back down the hill. The patrol officer stepped out cautiously, as if approaching a suspicious raccoon, not a supposedly dangerous trespasser. One read from a notepad he clearly didn't trust. The other kept glancing from the house to his partner like, "You sure this is the place?" Rachel opened the door before they could knock. No dramatic swing, no action, hero strut, just calm. The kind of calm that unnerves people more than shouting ever could. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said. "I understand you're here to remove me from my own cabin." The younger officer's brain, visibly blue, screamed. "Ma'am, we received a 911 report claiming a trespass in progress. The complainant identified you by name." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "And yet here I am in my pajamas making breakfast." He floundered, then grabbed the safest phrase available. "May we come in?" "Of course." She stepped aside like she was inviting them to brunch. I hung back by the hallway, watching them try to reconcile the nonsense they'd been sent to deal with against the very normal cabin in front of them. Fishing rods by the door, grocery bags half unpacked, an apple half sliced on the counter. Nothing remotely criminal, unless apple mutilation made the statute book. The younger officer flipped to a second page. "The complainant stated that you refused to vacate when told you were not an authorized occupant." Rachel exhaled, just enough to register annoyance without disrespect. "Officer, I'm the co-owner of this property in every meaningful way except a paperwork technicality. My husband purchased the cabin under an LLC that lists only his name. But I live here, I pay for it, and I certainly didn't break in." The older officer nodded slowly, already smelling HOA nonsense under all the legal perfume. "Do you have proof of affiliation with the owner?" His tone was gentle. Without missing a beat, Rachel picked up her phone and tapped. "Marriage certificate, LLC listing with me as co-executive, and swipe, photo of my husband handing me the key the day we bought it." They leaned in to look. The younger one started to respond, then paused, squinted, and checked his notes. "Ma'am, I just want to confirm something. Your name is Rachel Merritt?" "Yes." He swallowed. "As in Commander Merritt?" Rachel gave a polite nod. Both officers straightened so fast I almost heard vertebrae click. The older one took off his hat. The younger one turned about 3 shades, paler. "Commander, ma'am," he stammered. "We didn't realize we weren't informed." Rachel held up a hand. "Relax. You're doing your job, and frankly, I'm glad you responded professionally, but I want something on record." She picked up the remote and pulled the security feed onto the TV. Grainy footage appeared. Karen creeping around our cabin 2 days earlier, photographing our recycling bin like she was running a garbage sting operation. Another clip. Karen with a tape measure at our firewood stack, muttering to herself. Another. Her stepping onto the porch without knocking, measuring the distance from the welcome mat to the door. If she ever went into real crime, she'd have a head start in surveillance. The older officer sighed. "That's trespassing." Rachel nodded. And harassment, and misuse of emergency services as she called 911 claiming I was an intruder. That is exactly what she did, the younger admitted. She said you were refusing to leave the property. Rachel folded her arms. I was refusing to leave my breakfast. The officers exchanged a look. We have been dragged into a circus. Commander, the older one said carefully, if you want to file charges, not yet, Rachel cut in. But I do want every call the dispatch involving this residence logged from this point forward. Of course, he was already pulling out a form. While they filled it out, I watched Rachel not angry, not rattled, just coldly focused, like someone laying out puzzle pieces for a picture she already knew by heart. When they left, they apologized 3 separate times. The younger even offered extra patrols. I don't need protection, Rachel said. I need documentation. After they stepped off the porch, I closed the door and leaned against it. Well, I said, that went better than expected. Rachel gave a humorless smile. Karen thinks this is a power struggle with a woman she believes doesn't belong here. She doesn't understand. She just put herself on a collision course with actual law. I nodded, though my stomach tightened. Because the 911 stunt wasn't the end. It was the opening salvo. That evening, long after the patrol car taillights vanished and the sun dropped behind the pines, Rachel and I sat on the porch. The sky softened into that particular fading blue Lake Pine seems to own. The water was still. Cicadas hummed. But Rachel wasn't watching the lake. She was watching the road. She's coming, she murmured, and she was right. Around 8 p.m., Karen's Lexus crept past the house. No stop, no wave, just a slow surveillance crawl, headlights off, her tinted window turned toward us like a predator's eye. I caught a glimpse of her face in the glow of the dash, jaw locked, eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a razor-thin line. Rachel didn't move, didn't blink. She's trying to see if she scared me, she said. If calling 911 rattled me. Did it? I asked. Rachel shook her head. No. But it told me something important. What's that? She's escalating, and she won't stop until something burns. I blew out a slow breath. So what do we do? Rachel finally turned to me. The porch light caught in her eyes a small spark. We let her escalate, she said. We let her climb as high as she wants. Why? So she can fall from a height she'll never recover from. A chill ran through me, not dread, exactly. More like that electric quiet when you realize someone at the table has been playing 5 moves ahead the whole time. This wasn't just a petty HOA dispute anymore. This was a woman with zero real power trying to pick a fight with a woman who lived and breathed actual authority. Rachel dismantled drug rings. She exposed corrupt judges. She oversaw every law enforcement agency in the state. Karen had a clipboard. This was never going to be a fair fight. If you've ever lived under an HOA, you already know this truth. Once a Karen feels embarrassed, she doesn't retreat, she reloads. The morning after the 911 fiasco, we saw just how fast embarrassment could turn into a crusade. The day started normal. I was frying eggs. Rachel came back from her morning run, hair damp from lake mist. At 9:17 on the dot, Karen's Lexus slid past our cabin again, slower this time. Not her usual patrol for imaginary violations speed. This was reconnaissance, the speed of someone building a story in her head. I stood at the window with my coffee. Second pass this morning. Rachel didn't look surprised. She's checking to see if the police hauled me away last night. She really thought I'd be gone. She hoped fear would do what her fake authority couldn't. She went inside, grabbed her phone, and started scrolling with the kind of sharp focus that means she isn't just reading, she's filing. A moment later, she held it out to me. An email. Subject line in all caps. unauthorized, OCC Cupin remens on property, Argentine Rengen. From Karen. To the entire HOA board. Time. Stamped 7:30 a.m. Didn't take her long, Rachel murmured. The email was a masterclass in delusion. Karen claimed Rachel had verbally threatened her, refused mandatory inspections, and evaded rule enforcement. She'd even attached a blurry photo of Rachel jogging past a pine tree, with loitering scrawled next to it in, yes, Comic Sans. Loitering, on the road we pay taxes for, I said, choking on my coffee. Rachel didn't laugh. She's serious, and the more she loses face, the more dangerous she becomes. She wasn't wrong. By noon, another email hit our inbox. This one from the HOA treasurer, Greg, a nervous man who treated spreadsheets like scripture. Per recent complaints and community concern, the board will hold a special session this afternoon to review possible violations. Please prepare relevant documentation. No greeting, no sign-off, just raw bureaucratic dread. You want me to come with you? I asked. She shook her head. No, this isn't a showdown. Not yet. Let her dig. The clubhouse always reminded me of a dentist's office repurposed into a library for people who yell about mulched depth beige, sterile, humming with passive aggression. I waited in the truck. Even through the thin walls, Karen's voice leaked out, sharp and frantic. She refuses to comply with our standards. She isn't registered. We cannot allow instability. Instability. Her new favorite word. A softer voice Greg's probably ventured. There's no legal basis to remove her, Karen. She's married to the owner. She's unverified, Karen snapped. We have rules. Then Rachel's voice, calm and surgical, cut through. If I may, not only am I married to the deed owner, I am also listed as co-executive on the LLC that holds the property. And though I dislike bringing this up, I'm also the head of our state's law enforcement division. So unless this HOA plans to take this matter into an actual courtroom, I suggest we stop pretending this is anything more than personal. Silence. Not respectful, terrified. Braid mumbled something about protocols. Karen cut him off. She's mocking our authority. Rachel's voice sharpened. Karen, the only reason this hasn't gone legal is because I assumed you were capable of stopping before you embarrassed yourself further. Instead, you've escalated. You've misused HOA procedures. You've attempted to weaponize legal processes to remove a lawful resident because you don't like her. The air went so still I could almost hear people blinking. Then the door opened. Rachel walked back to the truck, buckled in, and stared straight ahead. How'd it go? I asked. They're afraid of her, she said. Too afraid to vote. Too afraid to vote. Too afraid to stop her. They postponed the issue. Postponed? They want more documentation. She watched the windshield. In reality, they're giving her rope. You think she'll hang herself with it? Rachel shook her head. No. She'll try to drag me with her when she jumps. She wasn't exaggerating. That evening, my phone rang. Our insurance company. An anonymous report naturally claimed our cabin was an illegal rental, a violation that could jack our premiums if we couldn't prove residency in 72 hours. This woman, I muttered, rubbing my forehead. Rachel forwarded documents so fast the rep didn't finish his script. Calmly. Too calmly. That's how I knew she was furious. Rachel's anger is never loud. It's organized. The next morning, another notice landed in our inbox, this time from county zoning. A noise complaint had triggered a septic inspection request for potential misuse of utilities. Karen wasn't throwing pebbles anymore. She was hurling bricks. And then she crossed the line. Saturday night, we drove back from dinner in town. Windows cracked. Pine-cold air sliding through. When we turned onto our road, everything looked normal until it didn't. Rachel braked. The front door was open. Just a crack. Just enough to be deliberate. She rushed forward. I followed, heart hammering. Inside, nothing was stolen, nothing smashed. But nothing was quite right either. A framed photo of us lay face down on the console. A drawer, the one where Rachel kept her off-duty badge, pulled halfway open. A coat draped over a chair instead of on its hook. Not a burglary. A message. Rachel pulled out her phone. Her voice went so controlled it gave me chills. Activate incident report. Code red. Intrusion with civil escalation suspected. Secure location immediately. Her phone chirped acknowledgement. Then she turned to me. She crossed the line. The next morning brought no squad cars and no apology from the HOA. It brought a drone. A small black quadcopter hovered outside our second-floor window, its little red camera light blinking. Its buzz filled the cabin like an insect made of malice. I pushed the curtain aside. The drone tilted toward me, lens widening like an eye. Rachel didn't flinch. She sat at the table with her coffee, reviewing the break-in footage. Expression all business. We've got a new visitor, I said. She's documenting us, Rachel replied, sipping. Documenting what? She's baiting us. Waiting for me to react on camera. If she gets footage of me yelling, she'll use it to justify another call. You think she's that strategic? No. Rachel said. She's desperate. Desperation can look like strategy if you squint. She forwarded the intrusion footage to several agencies with the ease most people forward memes. Then she made a call. Yes, I'd like to open a formal investigation into unauthorized access and harassment by a private HOA member using stolen emergency credentials. Emergency credentials. Those restricted master keys, HOAs are. Supposed to guard like gold. Karen had used one to get into her house, and that's when the game truly changed. Time to lay a trap, Rachel murmured, setting her phone down. She wants escalation. Let's give her something she can't climb out of. The thing about Rachel, something Karen never grasped, is that she doesn't rush. She doesn't flail. She doesn't react from emotion, even when someone breaks into our home or sends a drone to our bedroom window. When Rachel moves, she moves with intent. The morning after the drone incident, I found her at the dining table surrounded by documents, screens, and a mug of black coffee. She was scrubbing through break-in footage frame by frame. She's escalating faster than I expected, Rachel murmured. Which part? I asked. The break-in, the drone, the insurance fraud, all of it. People like her always escalate when their authority's challenged. But breaking into a state official's home? She paused the video on a blurry figure in an unmistakable pastel sweater. That tells me she thinks she's untouchable. So what now? Rachel tapped the screen. Now I stopped letting her dictate the pace. Before I could ask what that meant, a car door slammed outside. Then another. I went to the window and there she was, Karen, marching up our walkway like she owned every pebble. Towing behind her a young man in a cheap suit hauling a briefcase far too large for his confidence. He looked like a lawyer who'd passed the bar on his sixth try and immediately specialized in bad advice. Karen pounded on the door. Rachel rose, smoothed her shirt. "Let's do this," she said, opening with a smile that belonged in a museum under weapons, quiet. Karen didn't smile back. She jerked her chin toward the young man. "Tell her." He cleared his throat like he was announcing his own execution. "Ma'am, I'm Stephen, representing the HOA's legal advisory team. We've prepared a cease and desist regarding your conduct and unauthorized presence within the HOA's jurisdiction. If you refuse to comply." Rachel lifted a hand barely an inch. Stephen stopped mid-sentence. "Stephen," she said mildly, "let me stop you there. First, I've already filed complaints with multiple state agencies about Karen's behavior, complaints that include criminal trespass, unlawful surveillance, and misuse of emergency entry keys." She nodded toward the black controller clutched in his other hand. "Second, this property falls outside the enforcement reach of your bylaws due to its LLC corporate structure and jurisdictional classification. I verified that with county records this morning." Stephen's forehead creased. Karen's jaw clenched. And finally, Rachel stepped closer, voice lowering. "I'm not just a resident. I am Commander Rachel Merritt, director of this state's law enforcement division. So unless you have a court order signed by a judge, what you're holding is just stationary with ambition." Stephen swallowed like he was trying to choke down a cinder block. Karen chose that exact moment to double down. "Your position is irrelevant," she snapped. "You're a threat to community order. You don't respect our authority." Rachel turned her head slightly. "Authority comes from law, Karen, not from clipboards." The air stilled. Rachel held out her palm. "The drone controller." Karen blinked. "What?" "The controller," Rachel repeated. Color drained from Karen's face. She hesitated, then slowly dug into her purse and produced the small black device. Her hands shook as she placed it in Rachel's hand. Rachel flipped the switch and powered it down with the quiet finality of a guillotine. "Unauthorized surveillance device neutralized," she said. Stephen looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him. Karen opened her mouth, closed it, grabbed Stephen's sleeve, and nearly dragged him back to the Lexus, muttering about community safety protocols. When they finally roared off, gravel spitting like confetti at their own funeral, I turned to Rachel. "Was that legal?" She smirked. "Legal enough, and the law tends to side with the people who weren't flying espionage drones at dawn." The universe wasn't done with surprises. That evening, while Rachel rinsed dishes and I pretended to sort mail, her phone buzzed. She dried her hands, checked the caller ID, and muttered, "Of course." Judge Hafford. Hafford wasn't just any judge. He'd served on panels with Rachel, lost poker nights to her, knew exactly who he was calling. "Evening, Hafford," she answered. His voice came through tight and tired. Rachel, I've got something unusual on my desk. An emergency injunction request to remove a potentially unstable, unregistered individual from a residential community. Rachel's eyebrow arched. Unstable? Let me guess. It names me. It names you. Hafford confirmed. Filed pro se by a woman named, papers rustled, Karen Pinebrook. Rachel closed her eyes. Of course. This filing is, he exhaled hard. It's a mess. Plagiarized legal phrases, fake regulations, paragraphs that read like someone dictated them, pacing in circles. I'm rejecting it immediately, flagging it for review. But Rachel, she's not just being petty anymore. She's going nuclear. Rachel thanked him and hung up. She stared out the window for a long beat, watching the lake darken under the rising moon. She's cornered, Rachel said at last, and cornered people lash out. I didn't have to say what I was thinking. The quiet between us said plenty. This wasn't a neighborhood spat anymore. Karen had started a war she didn't understand. Rachel had just decided to finish it. The next morning, we got proof. Just after 7 a.m., 2 dark SUVs eased up our road. No sirens, just presence, the insignia of the State Ethics and Law Review Division stenciled on the doors. These weren't local cops responding to noise complaints. These were the people who dismantled corruption. 2 investigators stepped out. One tall and spare, the other compact with a briefcase that glowed, regulations from 20 feet away. Commander Merritt? The tall one asked. Rachel stepped onto the porch. Yes, we're initiating a formal inquiry into allegations of community leadership abuse, false filings, and misuse of enforcement powers by a member of your neighborhood HOA. He handed her a document. We'd like to interview you and your husband. A notice will go to the HOA board today. My jaw nearly hit the boards. Karen had wanted escalation. Congratulations. She'd invited the Department of Doom. Rachel scanned the papers. Thank you. We'll cooperate fully. They nodded and left. So, I said, still staring at the SUVs disappearing through the trees, this is happening. Rachel finally smiled, not the earlier wry grin. This one was colder, cleaner, a smile of someone who'd stopped holding back. Yes, she said, it is. Within an hour, 6 emails from panicked board members hit our inbox. 3 apologized for premature actions. 2 begged for clarification. One from Karen's closest ally insisted Rachel had misled investigators. Rachel ignored them all. Time to let the system do what it should have done from the start, she said, standing and rolling her shoulders like she was getting ready for a marathon instead of a meeting. Over the next day, the ethics team worked like machines: interviews, timelines, document verification, copies of video. By lunch, they had a working picture. By dinner, they had enough for a preliminary finding: probable misconduct by HOA leadership. Karen didn't know it yet, but her little empire of pettiness was already smoldering. If Rachel was ice, Karen was gasoline. And gasoline doesn't mellow when it feels cornered. That night around 8, Rachel and I stepped onto the porch with mugs of tea, hungry for a rare moment of quiet. The lake reflected the moon like polished steel. The pines whispered. Then we saw the Lexus, parked half a block down. Engine running. Headlights off. A dark silhouette pointed straight at our cabin. Karen sat behind the wheel, phone pressed to her ear, face lit by its glow and twisted into a tight, desperate mask. She's planning something, Rachel murmured. More complaints? I asked. Rachel shook her head. Not complaints, strategy. She tried local. Next time she'll reach higher. So what do? We let her, Rachel said, calm. The higher she climbs, the harder she falls. The air felt wrong, too still, too taut, like the whole forest was bracing. We didn't have to wait long. By the next morning, Karen had launched a new tactic: bureaucratic warfare. Our inbox exploded with board emails. Karen had filed a massive complaint accusing Rachel of refusing inspection, intimidating the president, violating vague occupancy codes, and, my personal favorite, creating a hostile environmental presence. I think she meant environment, but the typo somehow made it worse. The terrified board scheduled yet another emergency session. She's trying to bury me in paperwork, Rachel said. Is that possible? I asked. For normal people, yes. Rachel gave a dry smile. For me? No. She went alone again, turned down my offer twice. She wants me isolated, Rachel said. Let her think she has. I waited in the truck outside that same beige, joyless clubhouse while chaos muffled through the walls. Karen's voice shrilled first. She ignored the occupancy check, refused to let me in, displayed aggression. Someone Greg, by the sound cut in. We saw no aggression, Karen. She's not registered, Karen snapped. Then Rachel's voice, steady as glass. I am registered with the Secretary of State as co-executive of the LLC that owns the property. I also manage the operational budget for the law enforcement department that responds to your calls. A pause, then colder. If this HOA continues to misuse procedures to target lawful residents based on personal bias, I will file a state investigation into procedural abuse before dinner. You could have heard dust land in there. 20 minutes later, she slid back into the truck. Well, I asked. They're terrified of her, she said. They postponed everything. Again. More documentation? I guessed. In HOA, she said. That translates to, we're scared to confront Karen, so we'll let her keep going until someone else stops her. Which means Karen is going to get worse. And she did. That evening, the insurance company called. Another anonymous report that we were running an illegal vacation rental. Rachel handled it with the same clipped efficiency, forwarding proof without even sighing. The next day, zoning inspectors emailed. A septic review, triggered by, you guessed it, a noise complaint. Karen had stopped poking. She was swinging. But her biggest mistake was still coming. We came back from town after dark the next weekend, truck headlights cutting through the trees. Rachel stepped onto the porch first, key in hand. She froze. The door was open a fraction. Again. Inside, everything looked technically fine. No ransacked drawers this time. No overturned pictures. But the air felt disturbed. Rachel didn't speak. She just lifted her phone. Activate incident report. Code red. Intrusion confirmed. Civil escalation ongoing. Her voice was metal. The next morning, I told you, we got a drone. That was round 1. What came next was round 2. The harassment shifted. It started subtly. A package appeared at our mailbox. No stamp, no carrier label. Just a plain brown box with our cabin number scrawled in red ink red that made my skin itch. Inside was a bird feeder. Empty. Under it, a tiny folded note. You might have won the board, but you don't control me. I'm everywhere. I handed it to Rachel like it was ticking. She studied the handwriting calmly. She's testing boundaries, Rachel said, seeing if she can rattle us. With bird feeders? I asked. It's symbolic. She thinks she's subtle. I wanted to laugh. The cabin air was too heavy for it to come out. We didn't have to wait long for the next package, or the next. Within 3 days, we'd gotten 10. Gardening gloves, a hose nozzle, a bent wind chime, a packet of flower seeds, all unpostmarked, all hand-delivered, all useless, all unsettling. Package 10 was different. Same unlabeled box, same red scrawl. Inside was a cheap spiral notebook. Inside that pages of printed accusations, fabricated emails, fake spreadsheets showing made-up financial crimes, screenshots from invented accounts. At the end, one sheet, you're not the only target. Then came the knock. It was Vince 2 houses down. Quiet, gentle, the accountant who worked from his basement and waved shyly when he saw us. He stood on our porch pale as plaster, his hands shaking so hard the paper he held rattled. Rachel, he said, voice cracking, I got this, and so did 3 of my clients. He held out an email. Rachel read it silently. I leaned over her shoulder. It accused Vince of embezzling, of falsifying taxes, of cooking books complete with fake spreadsheets. Anyone who knew accounting would spot the errors. Clients, though, they panic. She's expanding, Rachel said softly, trying to destabilize everyone around us. Why me? Vince choked. What did I do? Rachel put a steady hand on his shoulder. You exist. That's all it takes for people like her. She's trying to isolate us, turn this whole place into chaos. What do I do? You report it, Rachel said. Now, within minutes, she had the state cybercrimes unit on the phone. I watched relief wash over Vince's face, not because the problem was fixed yet, but because he wasn't alone anymore. But there was damage. And Karen's attacks were becoming contagious. That night, Rachel sat at the table, lit only by the glow of her laptop and the pile of evidence she'd been slowly assembling into a weapon. "You're quiet," I said. "She's changing tactics," Rachel replied. "She's not hiding behind bylaws anymore. She's gone feral. She's using fear now. Fear spreads faster than rules." "How do you fight someone who hides in the shadows?" I asked. "You take away the shadows," Rachel said. The next afternoon, she did exactly that. She called a meeting, not an HOA session, no motions, no minutes, just neighbors at the old boat dock. No titles, no agendas, no clipboards. Word spread in whispers. People came. About 20 neighbors unfolded camp chairs on the dock and shore, thermoses in hand, suspicion in their eyes. Rachel stepped onto the weathered steps. She didn't shout. She didn't grandstand. She just told the truth. Calmly, thoroughly. She walked them through everything Karen had done, not just to us, to others. The false complaints, the intimidation, the unauthorized break-in, the drone, the fabricated financial accusations targeting Vince, the misuse of emergency access keys, the 911 call, the attempts to weaponize county systems, insurance, zoning, everything she could reach. She didn't embellish. She didn't dramatize. She laid the facts on the line and let them speak for themselves. By the time she finished, the truth itself felt heavy enough to bend the dock. You could have heard a pin hit the water. Then Rachel said something I'll never forget. "It's not enough to remove one person from power," she said, looking each of them in the eye. "We have to replace them with people who won't become the same thing. This community doesn't need enforcers. It needs guardians. People who protect each other instead of policing each other. The question isn't who leads next. The question is, who will make sure no one like Karen ever rises again?" Silence. Then nods. Then murmurs. The murmurs swelled not in anger but in agreement. By the next morning, a petition was circulating not to exile Karen, not to tar and feather her, but to dismantle the entire HOA leadership structure and rebuild it with real oversight. Legal review, term limits, transparent rules, an ethics committee, a community-first framework. 70 signatures in the first day. The vote was set for Monday. Karen didn't show up to the meeting, but everyone knew she was watching. The vote passed in a landslide. Every board member except Greg resigned on the spot. That same evening, a charter committee was formed to rebuild from the ground up. They asked Rachel to chair it. She declined. "I'm not here to lead," she said. "I'm here to prevent." And she meant it. For the first time since this began, Lake Pine felt lighter. Kids on bikes. People chatting at mailboxes. Vince no longer shaking when he waved. Linda, the neighbor who'd once used binoculars on everyone's yards, now training them on actual birds. But peace is deceptive. It's not the end. It's the inhale before the next blow. The next morning before dawn, we found an envelope in our mailbox. Plain white. No stamp. No return address. Our cabin number written in that same slanted, angry red. Inside, a single typed line. "I never left." Rachel didn't say a word. She slid the page into a plastic evidence sleeve and walked straight to her office. In 10 minutes, she'd made 2 calls, one to reopen the state harassment case, another to check statewide filings for any HOA registrations involving Karen. What she found turned my stomach. 20 minutes from Lake Pine, a new homeowners group had filed for HOA status. A tiny 9-home development, still under construction. One registered agent, Cassandra R. Aaron. Karen's full name, Karen Cassandra Pinebrook. She'd just shuffled the order, tweaked the spelling, and hidden behind a middle initial. She wasn't trying to disappear. She was trying to start over with a new throne. Watching Rachel read that filing, I realized something chilling. Karen didn't need to be president of our HOA to cause damage. She just needed any place that would hand her a crown. When Rachel saw that application, she didn't slam her laptop or curse. She just stared at the alias. "A recycled identity," she said quietly. "A rearranged signature. You clever, desperate little tyrant." "She's starting a new HOA," I said. "She's trying to start a new kingdom," Rachel corrected. "We're going to make sure she never gets the crown again." She gathered her files, tablet, and the thick evidence binder she'd built a stack that now weighed as much metaphorically as it did physically. "Come on," she said. "We're taking a drive." The sun was sinking when we reached the new development. The road snaked along the western ridge and spilled into a half-finished cul-de-sac, fresh concrete driveways, skeletal house frames, contractors hauling plywood in the orange light. Standing squarely in the center, in a crisp white blouse, pencil skirt, sunglasses, and her trademark undeserved authority, was Karen. She looked sharper now. Harder. Hair yanked into a tight bun, clipboard polished. She was giving instructions to two confused contractors like she'd bought the land with her blood. Rachel parked but didn't get out. She just watched. "You going to talk to her?" I asked. "No need," Rachel said. As if she felt eyes on her, Karen turned. Her gaze hit our truck and froze. Her jaw ticked. Her hand tightened on the clipboard. She straightened her blouse, but Rachel didn't move. She just observed her like a biologist watches a wounded predator sniffing new territory. Karen spun back to a set of blueprints, pretending we weren't there, but her shoulders told the truth. She knew she'd been seen. We drove home in silence. Back at the cabin, Rachel worked late. She filed an injunction request, not to torch the new HOA, not to claim revenge, but to force a fraud prevention review of Karen's application based on her documented misconduct at Lake Pine. "If she wants a throne, she can try to build one," Rachel said, stacking documents. "But she's not exporting her poison to anyone else." In the days that followed, the state advisory panel cross-referenced Karen's new filing with her real identity and disciplinary record. That was enough to trigger something Rachel herself had helped design years earlier. A statewide advisory went out. Anyone found guilty of abusing power in neighborhood governance would be flagged if they attempted any future leadership filings, even under modified names. Karen's new HOA application was yanked into immediate audit. Funding froze. Title transfers stalled. Her leadership eligibility was suspended indefinitely. She had no idea Rachel was behind the gears turning. She'd just feel the world tighten around her again. The morning the audit notice went through, Rachel didn't smile. "Good," she said simply. "The system works when someone forces it to." Life at Lake Pine slowly reset. A new board formed under the transitional charter. Real oversight returned. Complaints were logged properly. Inspections required approvals. No one carried a clipboard like a weapon. Rachel stayed away from titles. She declined every offer of office. Instead, she helped draft what she called guardrails, term limits, clear privacy rules, penalties for abuse, strict control of emergency keys. Not an empire, a firewall. And the cabin started to feel alive again. Coffee on the porch without checking cameras between sips. Walks by the lake without scanning the tree line. Nights without incident reports. Mornings without dread in the inbox. But trauma doesn't vanish. It lingers like a shadow at the corner of your eye. You don't always see it. You feel when it moves. Months later, I stepped onto the porch one morning and caught a sharp scent of pine resin. Stronger than usual, like bark had been freshly cut nearby. We live in a forest. Pine smell calms with the deed. But something about it prickled my instincts. Inside, Rachel was on a video call with the charter team, calmly explaining why drone surveillance and secret master keys would never again be considered reasonable enforcement. Her voice was steady. Underneath, the ghost of what we'd been through still whispered. I stood outside longer than I meant to, listening. The woods were quiet. The gravel road was empty. Then a twig snapped in the tree line. "Do you hear that?" I called when Rachel joined me a few minutes later. She inhaled. "Pine. What about it?" Another twig broke. Closer this time. Her posture shifted, wife, to commander in half a second. She turned her head toward the sound, listening like she could separate malice from the wind. Footsteps on gravel followed. Slow. Cautious. Coming from the road, not the woods. Rachel's shoulders eased. It wasn't Karen. It was Greg, the treasurer, the one board member who hadn't vanished when everything burned down. He held a clipboard, but he didn't carry it like a weapon anymore. More like a confession. He stopped at the bottom of the steps. "Evening," he said softly. Rachel stepped forward. "Greg, everything okay?" He half nodded. "Yes and no. I was hoping we could talk." Rachel gestured him up. He shook his head. "I'll stay down here. Feels more like apologizing that way." Rachel crossed her arms. I stood beside her. "We failed you," Greg said simply. "We failed this community. We let Karen run wild because we were scared to confront her, scared of retaliation, scared of the noise she made." Rachel didn't interrupt. Didn't let him off the hook either. I've been going through old records, he continued. She filed dozens of complaints, false, manipulated, targeted, quietly, for years. We didn't see it or we didn't want to. Fear protects abusers, Rachel said quietly. Silence feeds them. Greg nodded, eyes wet. We see that now. And we want your help. We want to rebuild right this time, legally, safely, fairly, no power hoarding, no intimidation. He swallowed. Would you help us write it? Not as our boss, just as someone who knows where this can go wrong. Rachel studied him for a long moment, reading sincerity, guilt, and something like resolve. I'll help, she said. As an advisor. I won't lead, I won't enforce, that's not my role here. Greg nodded, relief loosening his shoulders. That's more than enough. When he left, Rachel sat beside me on the porch steps. You trust him? I asked. I trust his guilt, she said. Guilt can be a powerful motivator to build better. We sat in companionable quiet until another, softer knock came after dark. It was Vince again, wringing his hands. Rachel, sorry it's late, he said. Rachel stood. What's wrong? He held out his phone. I got another email. Rachel read it. Her jaw set. This one was anonymous, accusing Vince of reporting his neighbors for fake HOA violations, pets, fences, noise, an attempt to turn people against him. She's still going, I whispered. Rachel shook her head. This isn't Karen. Vince blinked. Who else would? Rachel pointed to a turn of phrase, a sloppy formatting quirk. Karen wasn't messy. This is someone imitating her. Someone who saw the power she held and wants the same thing without the work or the title. Vince went a shade whiter. There's more than one? Power attracts the wrong people, Rachel said, not sugarcoating it. Then she put a hand on his arm. But no one is replacing her, not on my watch. She documented the email, forwarded it as another harassment report, and walked Vince home herself. When she came back, there was that same calm steel in her eyes. She tried to replicate herself, Rachel murmured. Or someone tried to replicate what she was. Either way, this is why systems matter. Think Karen knows about this copycat? I asked. She's too busy trying to rebuild her own empire, Rachel said. But she'll hear eventually. And then we make sure she finally fades, Rachel said. The next week blurred into work. Rachel helped shape the new charter, term limits, transparent complaint processes, multi-signature requirements for inspections, a mandatory outside legal consultant for major actions. No more secret keys, no more solo rulers. She also met again with the ethics investigators, providing additional proof that Karen's alias application and her Lake Pine misconduct were one and the same. They were already drafting statewide governance reforms for HOA's reforms Rachel had quietly inspired. It wasn't revenge. It was prevention. A month passed. The air cleared. The lake settled. Fear leached away slowly, like old smoke. Then one quiet morning, a different kind of letter arrived. Official seal. No drama. From the State Licensing Commission. Rachel opened it at the table. Her eyes moved slowly, steadily. It's over, she said at last. What is? She passed me the document. It was a permanent ruling. Karen Pinebrook, under any current or future variation of her legal name, was barred from holding any position of authority in any HOA, co-op, neighborhood committee, compliance team, or local governance body in the state. Not suspended, banned. I never thought I'd see something like this, I said, a system actually changing. Rachel leaned back, rubbing her temple. People like Karen don't just abuse power, she said. They expose the cracks where abuse grows. And you close the cracks, I said. She didn't quite smile, but her eyes softened. I didn't fix the system, she whispered. I just reminded it what justice is supposed to look like. That night, we sat on the dock, legs dangling over the water. The moon painted silver across the lake. Crickets sang. The cool wind moved through the pines without carrying a single trace of threat. Rachel rested her head on my shoulder. She won't try again? I asked. Rachel shook her head. Not here, not anywhere with power. Because she's afraid? No, Rachel said softly. Because there's nowhere left for her to hide. For the first time, not just since Karen launched her crusade, but since we bought the cabin, I felt deeply, uncomplicatedly safe. Not because Karen was gone, Because Rachel had rebuilt something stronger than fear, trust. The water lapped gently at the dock. The stars trembled in the lake like a promise. Somewhere far from Lake Pine, Karen was learning the lesson she'd done everything to avoid. That power built on fear always collapses under the weight of truth. Life eased into a new normal. Not the brittle normal you cling to in a storm, but the real kind. The kind that settles into your bones when the only sounds at night are crickets, wind, and the slow creak of porch boards. Rachel and I rebuilt our routine piece by steady piece: coffee on the porch, walks by the shore, dinners without side-eyeing every noise, mornings without bracing for another stunt. This whole mess changed more than our neighborhood. It changed me. I learned that real strength isn't loud. It doesn't posture. It doesn't come from clipboards, bylaws, or the illusion of control. Real strength is quiet, consistent, relentlessly fair. My wife reminded me and everyone around her that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand your ground with calm certainty and refuse to bend to abuse dressed up as authority. If there's a lesson here, it's this. When someone abuses power, they expect fear. They don't expect someone who won't break. Someone who knows the law, who protects their community, who keeps going even when it's exhausting. If you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, or any Karen in your life, drop your story below. And if you've been here for this whole ride, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Justice isn't always loud, but here, it's always served.